Hello, everyone. Welcome to Trade and Connectivity Challenge 2021 virtual briefing session with UPS. My name is Willie Law, representing Agorize and Enterprise Singapore as the moderator for this session. Today, it is our pleasure to have Mr. Gregory Esperton and Ms. Courtney Letterman here from UPS to walk us through the ins and outs of the challenge statement, waiting for your solution. So today's rundown is fairly straightforward. In the first half of this session, we'll start off with Courtney and Gregory to present their challenge statement, which is a digital solution that can help to identify the contents such as HS code classification, and etc., that will be shipped without opening the package and be mapped against list of prohibited and controlled goods and duties payable of the transshipment and destination country. And then after the presentation, we'll wrap it up with a Q&A session. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to submit the questions on the Q&A panel of the Zoom webinar. Please note that this session will be recorded and then be also uploaded onto the challenge platform at tradeandconnectivity.innovation-challenge.sg for future viewing. So now, without further ado, over to you, Courtney and Greg. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Billy, and hello, everybody. Thank you for taking some time out of your lunch hour to join us and learn more about this, this challenge that UPS and others in our industry are facing to see what innovative solutions might be out there. Next slide, please. I'll start with just quickly introducing myself. My name is Courtney Luderman, as Billy mentioned. My official title is I am the UPS APAC Region Director for Customs and Trade Compliance. What that means is I try to protect UPS and our customers in terms of meeting the myriad of cross-border regulations that govern our business, in particular the import, export, and transshipment packages across APAC. And I am one of the folks behind this challenge statement. I'd also like to introduce Gregory Experton, who's on the call from UPS. He is our UPS APAC Region Strategy Manager, responsible for managing all of our innovation programs within UPS and with UPS partners like Agorize and Enterprise Singapore. You've got my email address on this slide. If you do have any questions after the webinar, please feel free to reach out to me. Okay, now let's get into it. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start with just talking a little bit about UPS. Hopefully you've heard of us, but in case you haven't, we are a global integrated logistics company. Divided into a couple of areas. We're probably most well known as an express company, so doing door-to-door deliveries. But we also have some business units around freight forwarding and also contract logistics, or what we call contract logistics, which does a number of other logistics related services such as warehousing. So at a high level, that's how we're set up. We're quite an old company. We've been in business for over 100 years, which is pretty amazing. We're an American company headquartered in Atlanta, but of course we have a global reach and we're in about 220 countries and territories around the world. We're also a large company in terms of our employee size. We have over 500,000 employees, and this is a mixture of frontline service providers, individuals who drive vehicles and work in different hub operations, to, of course, more back office staff, such as HR, legal, things like that. We operate one of the world's largest airlines. Fun fact, you may not know, but we have a lot of aircraft in the sky at any given time. And just some stats here, we have 576 aircraft. And through that aircraft, but also on ground and rail as well, we move annually 5.5 billion packages. So there are things moving through our global network every day, every year, all the time, which is a complex undertaking to say the least. So that's a little bit about us on the global scale. And then in APAC, it's actually one of our smaller regions. We have about 13,000 employees. but we are in over 40 countries and territories, and we've got about 300 weekly flights. So a very important region for us, but relatively smaller compared to some other regions that we operate in. Okay, so now to the challenge statement, which all of you are waiting to learn more about. So I won't read what's on the slide, I'll let everybody read it, but just to give you a flavor of what we experience in UPS, I would say on a daily basis, is we move a lot of packages, as I mentioned. We have a lot of volume that's moving through our network. And there are certain things that we have to do, and I'd say mostly on the import side when we're importing something into a country, that we have to make sure as much as possible is correct. And for a number of different reasons, it needs to be correct, but largely because it affects how much we pay in taxes to the government. So what happens sometimes, or what can happen, is this: if a package is underdeclared, and underdeclared means the true value of the package is, say, $100, but it's declared as $75. So in that case, it would be underdeclared. Or if it's an underdeclared quantity, so the actual content of the package, as an example, has 10 pieces, but the commercial invoice says that it has 5, as an example, meaning, you know, the shipper or the customer is not declaring the full amount. That's not a good thing. And the reason, again, for that is we have obligations that we have to declare correct information of what we're importing or exporting or transshipping into a certain location, because then it determines how much tax is payable to the government. So when this happens, and then also if we move prohibited goods, so prohibited goods I think is more straightforward. If it's an item that is completely restricted or prohibited in a particular location, meaning the government says, we don't want it here, please do not move it into or out of our country or through our country, that's something that we don't want to do as well. So unfortunately, these situations happen sometimes, and they create problems for us, and they create problems for our customers. So it could be as extreme as we get shut down. We get told, hey, you can't operate in this location for forever or for a couple of days in a worst case scenario. Or it could mean, and this is a more likely scenario, our packages get inspected more. And so what that means is, you know, maybe we have a 1% inspection rate, and then we move to a 50% inspection rate. And what that means is it makes service slower. So it makes it more difficult for us to deliver our promise to our customers in terms of committed service. And then the last two are also equally as important. Again, looking on the right-hand side. Loss of simplified customs clearance procedures. Basically what that means is there's just more paperwork and more red tape to get the goods cleared or to get the goods moved in and out of a country. We just have to jump through more hoops, maybe provide more information, or just meet more requirements, which ultimately slows down service and commitments to customers. And then the last, of course, is very important: loss of credibility with regulators. So regulators, the government, customs, financial authorities, they expect us to follow the law. And so when we don't, we lose credibility with them. And that's certainly something that we don't want to do. Next slide, please. So that's a little bit about our challenge. So this is a long-standing issue. This is not something new. And we do have solutions in place on our network today to try to identify these kinds of packages as they're moving through our network. But they're expensive, or actually they're maybe not as effective as they could be. So one option is we open every single package, which is what I mean by 100% package screening. So, in an extreme scenario, we open every single package and we check that the contents on the commercial invoice are as described in terms of what's in the package. Now, that's not really realistic if you're moving billions of shipments or packages a year. And also if you're operating an express network, which means you have very fast time in transit and turnaround, it's kind of doesn't really work with that business model. So that's something that, and of course it's costly. So that's something that we prefer not to do. The other traditional solution that we have are manual keyword searches. And so what that means is in our systems, in our backend systems, and we do this primarily for prohibited goods, we will put in the name of prohibited goods for a particular country. Now, the problem with that is it only works if the customer, the shipper, declares what they're shipping correctly. And as probably many of you can guess, some customers knowingly don't know that they're shipping prohibited goods, and then we catch those. But some customers do, and unfortunately, they use our network this in the same way. And so that kind of a scenario we wouldn't be able to detect because it hasn't been declared correctly in the first place. So this is kind of the state today. So really what we're looking for is how can we better leverage technology to identify these kinds of goods proactively and in different ways? And ideally, how can we determine the risk of a package without even opening the package? So based on the data that we have, is there a way that we can get a sense of, is this a risky package or not, without even connecting the data flow related to the package with the physical contents of the package itself? Now, there's different ways that we think we can do this. There's, of course, different data elements associated with the package. A common one, which Billy mentioned in his remarks, is a tariff classification. That's one way to do it. There could be other ways as well, but being able to tie somehow, the risk level based on information that we typically would have about a package, such as tariff classification. And then that's actually my third point, to see if we can map those two against each other to determine a risk level. Ideally, and this is the fourth bullet point, we would want to do this as early as possible in the supply chain. Now, this is a challenge because we don't always have data on the package at the point the package is picked up. But ideally, we would want to do this, again, as early as we could in the supply chain, where the package is picked up at origin, and then it starts to move on its journey to destination, wherever it's going. And then, of course, we want to layer in this technology as much as possible, being able to maintain UPS Express operations, which again is premised on fast time in transit with committed service. In terms of cost, we're looking for minimal capital investment. And what that means is we're not looking to buy, large machines or large physical assets as much as possible. We're really looking to leverage technology as much as we can, looking for technology solution that we can layer into our operational process and our operations technology to try again to identify these packages as proactively as we can. And then in terms of the potential market, this is a need anywhere in the globe, which is, I think, why it's an exciting challenge. We need this in every operation. But of course, because we're all in APAC or in Singapore, trialing it in this region would make sense. But the potential market is global. It's not only needed for APAC. Next slide, please. So I've touched on this a little bit already, but really we're looking for technology solution. We're not looking for a big investment in hardware, so to speak. So really a technology solution that helps us identify proactively packages that we think are risky as early as we can in the supply chain. We're looking to use, certainly open to other ideas, but we think that new technologies such as data analytics and machine learning might be good candidates for this problem. We have tried some pilots inside UPS using some of these technologies. And we've seen some initial results, but we think that if we could find the right setup and the right use case, these may be good technologies to use, but certainly we're not limited to these kinds of technologies. And then in terms of the targeted benefits, the first one I've touched on, we want to be able to proactively identify what we think are high risk shipments. So then we have a decision to make. We can decide to let the package keep moving, or we can do what we call an open box inspection and validate whether or not that package should be allowed to continue to move. The second point is this is related around to our own operation, but also how we engage with regulators. So just as much as possible, we know we're going to need to inspect shipments, but we want to inspect shipments that we think are high risk. So we want to find that sweet spot where we're inspecting shipments that we think have a relatively high likelihood based on a risk indicator that they need to be inspected. And so with the idea of, inspecting shipments, of course, when we need to, but keeping that number, that percentage as low as we can. And then the last points, maybe I'll just talk on the last bullet point. The last bullet point is part of having this tool will also help us ensure that we can maintain service for legitimate trade. And what I mean by legitimate trade are shipments that have no issues. They're compliant. The customer has followed the rules. And so those packages should be allowed to continue to move. And so having a tool that allows us, again, to focus on high risk packages while allowing the legitimate ones to continue to move. Next slide, please. Okay, good. So I didn't talk too long. So now we have time for Q&A. So I will turn it over to Billy,
Yes.
I think.
Thanks, Courtney.
Any question?
Yeah, so we actually have one question from Ben. And this question is, would solutions with hardware components not be considered then?
Would solutions with hardware components not be considered? I would say no. But I think because hardware is quite an expansive definition that can mean many different things, as we all know. I would say that we are looking for a solution that won't require a lot of capital investment in a particular operation, but instead is a solution that's scalable or more scalable across multiple operations. Because again, this is not something we need in one operating location. It's a solution we need in literally thousands of operating locations.
Okay.
So my point is it needs to be scalable.
Right. Got it. Thank you. So just want to remind the attendees, if you have any questions, feel free to raise them up on the Q&A panel. This is the time for you to ask any questions or any clarifications you'd like.
And I will say, if anybody, is shy right now or is still thinking about questions they may have, feel free to drop me an email. My email was, I think, in the earlier slide. That's totally fine too. In case, you need a bit more time to think of questions.
Yeah, maybe the presentation was very clear for them, so there are no further questions. Okay, we'll just give a couple of seconds. Is there anything that maybe Greg would like to add on, or are we good?
Thanks, Billy. No, I think it was great and very clear. So nothing on my end so far.
Great, awesome. All right, so I think these are all the questions. Again, as Courtney was saying, if you have any questions, or you're still kind of digesting the content presented, you can always reach out to us. So aside from emailing Courtney directly, you can also use our platform, our challenge platform, to raise any questions. And if you're new, this is the first time you're here with us on TCC, we sincerely invite you to register on tradeandconnectivity.innovation-challenge.sg so that you can be a participant and you can get the resources as you need. And I think we have no more questions for today, but that's fine. I'm sure it will come later on, and we're more than happy to take them as we go along. So I hope this session provided new insights and better clarity for you guys, for the attendees here, hoping that you can understand the challenge that your UPS is currently facing. And we're looking forward to seeing your submissions by December 30th of this year. And thank you very much again, Courtney and Greg, for your presentation and taking the time to answer some of the questions that our attendees have. So thank you very much, everyone. I think we can wrap up today's session. Is there any closing remarks from Courtney or Greg before we end?
I'll just make one, which is, I guess, a pitch to all the startups on the call, which is fitting. So even though UPS is raising this challenge, I would say this is actually an industry challenge. So if you're thinking about scalability and market potential, not only from a UPS point of view, also think about it from an industry point of view. I mean, the need is there definitely within all the express companies, and probably even other parts of the logistics industry as well. So that's part of my pitch to all of you in terms of a problem to work on that has potential. I think this is one that if for somebody who can solve it, it will definitely help UPS, but it will help actually I don't want to say the entire logistics industry, but definitely the entire express logistics industry.
Great, thanks so much, Courtney. And again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you very soon. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you, bye.